Today's class is entitled Using Compiled Genealogies on FamilySearch. Our presenter is Jerroleen Sorensen. She's an accomplished researcher and has knowledge of available methods of research that will improve our abilities to find our ancestors. Jerroleen is also very user-friendly and willing to assist others to take advantage of those methods she has found to be useful in doing her research. We appreciate the time she's taken to prepare for this presentation and her willingness to teach us to be more effective in our efforts. We'll now turn the time over to Sister Sorensen.
Thank you very much. I am really happy to be doing this class today on compiled genealogies. A lot of people don't know what they are, but you can find a lot of good information on them if you're careful. My husband discovered the wonders of the genealogies when he was helping someone with trying to find a family member that he had been looking for years, decades even. And when they went on to the compiled genealogies, he was able to find that name and the person, and the patron was able to add that on to her own family search and do the research that was needed for that person. So it can really be really useful for you. So let's just take a look at it. So compiled genealogy is a term we use in genealogy for just a lot of different types of records, but they are not original records. They're records that contain information about families that other people have gathered over the years, sometimes over the centuries. So they can be very old or they can be very modern. And sometimes they're done by organizations, sometimes they're done by individuals, sometimes they're done by genealogical societies. Sometimes archives pull them together into their archives. So they can include a lot of different kinds of records, pedigree charts, compiled data of families, ancestor lists, collections of documents that have been copied or have been collected from, say, Bibles, family Bibles, lots of other types of records. The difference between them and an original source is that compiled genealogy a lot of times does not have any original sources attached. Now, that's not always true, but many times you'll find that they really don't do very good work with their original sources. So the second thing is that they are not considered to be original sources unless they, for example, are an exact duplicate of a record that is a compiled genealogy that was done by an original person who knew for example, as in a family Bible type situation. That would be considered an original source on a compiled genealogy. Most of the time, they're not considered original sources. So if you find information in a compiled genealogy, you really need to go and find sources about those individuals and not accept the family as being completed through that other compiled genealogy that you have found. However, that being said, they are extremely useful if you are looking for ancestors that you just simply haven't found anyplace else and wonder if you're even on the right track, or if you've hit a brick wall and you just don't know where to go from there. So sometimes they're really useful in that sense. Or if you have, like, say, for example, a grandfather who just dropped out of sight and you don't know anything about him, it's possible that there may be some other information out there that someone else has found. They can be actually really fun because sometimes they include a lot of stories, historical facts and histories, as well as just the lists of names. So they're not just necessarily lists of names. They can include a lot of other things. Compiled genealogies, as I said, are not considered original sources generally. So you have to kind of look at them a little bit more carefully and not accept them 100%. So why should you use them? I just gave you some reasons to use them, but there are some others. The compiled genealogy obviously has had a lot of research done on it by other people. Of course, you can trust some people and some people you can't, and you have to just be careful about that. But if that work's already been done, then why should you have to go out and search for all those sources again on your own? You shouldn't. So these can really actually be really helpful for you. So they can help you save time. They can provide clues. They can keep you from duplicating the efforts of the other people have put in. And they can help you cooperate with others. If the person that's been working on that compiled genealogy is still living, you can get in touch with them and communicate with them. I have a lot of communication with many of my own relatives who are working very hard compiling genealogies on their families and on my family as it relates to theirs. So we get together by email or by message and we talk about different things and ask different questions. And sometimes it's really very helpful to have somebody do that. Someone corrected a mistake of mine the other day. And I was very grateful for that, because it was a difficult question that I had worked on, and I had fairly tentatively, but almost 100% decided it was right, but I was still not quite sure. And so this person was able to say, no, look at this idea over here. And so I did. And yes, indeed, I was wrong. I'm always willing to admit when I'm wrong, but be aware that they can be subject to error, and they're often incomplete. So evaluate everything you find on the compiled genealogy. Don't just accept it. There is a good research wiki article called Compiled Genealogy, the 5-star quality rating system, that lets you actually look at each thing step by step and say, is this going to work? Is this going to be for me? Is this, no, that's not good. Okay. So that's kind of helpful as well. So how do you find them? Where are they? They're all over the place. You can find compiled genealogies done by your relatives and other family members. You just need to find them and ask them and say, do you have any family group records? For example, with the old PAF records, people put those in from their own personal records. And there are relatives in this world who have huge books full of family group records that have been submitted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And those are the basis in certain ways of the FamilySearch Family Tree. Let me give you an example of this. When I was first doing genealogy when I was in college, my grandmothers on both sides had done quite a bit of genealogy on their own, or had work that other people had done. And so I went and I copied all my grandma's family search records onto a paper family search records. And I had a big stack of them. So when I started doing family history online, I was looking for my grandmother's family, and I came across discrepancies and differences that I could not reconcile. And so I went to my grandmother's group records, and I found this aunt of hers. It was her aunt. And she had had a husband. And as it turned out on the group record, my grandmother had written down her aunt's second husband's name, but she didn't know his first name, and she didn't have an exact, it's either this name or that name. And so my grandmother's passed away. She died in 1987. So I couldn't talk to her about it, but I had written it down. And so on those compiled genealogies that she had, I was able to find his name, possible name anyway. And then online, I was able then to narrow down people and find his record and her record of marriage. And as it turned out, she had had a son, and I was also trying to find her son, and I couldn't find any information on him. But her son had actually been adopted by her second husband, and she died when she was very young, in her 30s. And so her second husband actually adopted her son and took him to California with him. And so when I found her second husband, I found her son as well. And so we were able to get more information about him and get his information put into Family Tree and so on. And of course, do the work for him through the church. So that was a really great experience for me. And I felt like writing those things down, I didn't really want to do it because it was a lot of work, but I did. And I was really grateful that I followed my intuition or prompting or whatever you want to call it. So that's a really good source of them. But again, you need to be careful, but they can be helpful. There are lots of books that contain compiled genealogies, and they're all over the place online. But some of the best sources of them online are in the book section of the Family Search Library menu. You can look under Google Books. You can look in the Internet Archive. The Internet Archive, as I was just mentioning, is a wonderful source. I was just looking at it again, and I found someone under my dad's family name, Hicken. I just was looking under that general name. And I'm not sure, I haven't done the research on this, but I recognized at least 3 of the names that were in the entry in this book called the Preem family. It's not, if I'd been looking for Hicken and didn't just use it as a keyword, I might not have found it, but this is in a different name even of a family, but it has what I believe is my ancestor. She's kind of a collateral ancestor over there. And so I will be able to maybe use this book as a source to go for further information about her. You can look in the research wiki as well. There's a compiled genealogy article for, I don't think it's every country that's on there, but any country that has a compiled genealogy. So if you look under the category, if you've seen my other wiki videos, you'll remember how to use the categories. They're really actually quite easy. But if you just type in category : compiled genealogies, or you can put in the place name : compiled genealogies, you'll find compiled genealogies specific to countries that are on the wiki. And underneath that, you'll find the actual article, and they will give you information on where the compiled genealogies for that country are. German genealogy, the term is Familienbücher. I didn't have the umlaut on that because I forgot how to put umlauts on in an English keyboard, and I didn't want to look it up. So excuse me, but it's under Familienbücher anyway. In the wiki, they don't use the umlauts. So Familienbücher, if you've got German ancestry. You can also look just online on the databases that contain genealogies. So FamilySearch Family Tree, Ancestry.com, MyHeritage, WikiTree, GeneCom.com, Tribal Pages, GeneNet, American Ancestors, although I think that's defunct now. So there's a whole bunch of them that you can look and find if people make their trees public. And so if you want to find somebody, oftentimes that's a good place. Now, I am extremely careful of those trees because they can be really bad, like really, really bad. But they can sometimes give you a name. Again, this is what we're looking for, is a name, so that then you can go ahead and find information about that name. Also, the French have French notary books, and that's similar to that. They're like community books, kind of like the Familienbücher, that have community trees of all the families in a community. And those are really good if you have French ancestry. And I know that other countries, I only do German, English, and French, basically, in American genealogy. So, but you can find those other things under the category compiled genealogy. Archives and local libraries can have collections within their library that are not online necessarily. In fact, most of them probably aren't online. We just were down in a little tiny town in northern Nevada, actually. And we stopped at their museum, and they had shelves and shelves of old family history books that had been given to them, donated to them. And many, many of them had genealogies in them. So that would, if you were from that area, it would be fantastic for genealogy. So you can go to the Research Wiki article called The Checklist of Compiled Sources, and this will give you some more information on how to find those and also locating compiled genealogies. Now, how is FamilySearch genealogies different from FamilySearch Family Tree? Well, they're both compiled genealogies. Okay, so FamilySearch Family Tree is a compiled genealogy in and of itself. It's been compiled from a bunch of different sources. A compiled genealogy, as you heard, is just a group of names, and oftentimes with sources to how those names are connected to each other, and they just go back and back and back in time. And that's what the FamilySearch Family Tree. In most genealogies, either books or in, unless they're just under like one particular person as an ancestor, but in most genealogies like that are compiled, they will actually be a lot of different people's trees put together in a database or in a book or something like that. Now, the FamilySearch Family Tree, and this is where people sometimes go crazy, is that it is not your tree, it is not my tree, it is not Abraham Lincoln's tree, it is the whole world's tree. So it's a single tree, and it wants to go back to the single lineage. Of course, that will not happen in this lifetime or anyone's lifetime right away, but the goal is to have all of humanity in one huge compiled genealogy. And that's what we're doing with that. That's why we have to merge. We just really do. And if you haven't learned how to merge yet, please learn how to merge accurately and don't merge things unless you're really sure. If you don't know for sure that it's the same person, then give a reason why you think it might be the same person, but don't merge. Okay, so on the genealogies page, most genealogies, as I told you, their accuracy is not very good. But in FamilySearch, the FamilySearch genealogies has a bunch of different collections. So it's not just one, it's a different, like a large directory of family trees, and they're all indexed and they're all available to you to look at. So they've been shared with Family Tree by either individuals or by organizations. And so FamilySearch has organized the information into collections, and then they've made it available for you to use to search it for your family. So because they are compiled genealogies, they are not necessarily right. So FamilySearch has generously labeled them high, moderate, or unknown data accuracy label with those labels. So if something says unknown accuracy, really be suspicious. If it says moderate, then you can maybe trust it a little more. High means it's probably fairly accurate, and so there's not as much information that you may need to correct. But still be careful of it, even if it says high. Okay, so how can you use the genealogies collection? We'll go directly there now. You can use the search function. When you go to the genealogies page, use the search function by adding names, a place, and a birth year. You can use an asterisk for a partial search. You can click on more options and search by life events, family members, or other options. Or you can use an exact search. I personally start with an exact search and then move back to the most general search. If nothing comes up on the exact search, then don't keep trying with an exact search. Just go back to your general search and then come more and more specific. And that works for me. Maybe that's not how everybody does it, but that's how I do it. Very specific. And then if that doesn't work first time, then I go back to general. If you do a general search, it'll bring up a list of all the instances in the genealogies collection where your ancestor appears in any of the genealogies in that collection. And then you can click on the listed files and it will bring up the information from that file. We'll go through each file separately so you'll know what you're looking for. Some entries in the collections will be very useful, and some of them are just maybe possibly just a name, so that's not always that helpful. So the pedigree resource file can often, it doesn't always, but it can have good sources actually on a person. So for example, this is from my own GEDCOM that's in the pedigree resource file. But you can see it lists my sources. It also lists my notes because I use the newest edition of it. So if you have one on there and it's older, then go ahead and make a new file and put it back in again. You have to delete the old file and just put a new file in. So for more information on how to search the general collection, you can see that article there, search the pedigree resource file and other genealogies. That's not in the wiki, that's in the FamilySearch help. So you have to put that in on the help page, the help center page. Okay, you can also search for a specific tree in the FamilySearch genealogies. And this is what it says on the actual page. Let us help you find the tree you're looking for, enter a surname or place. So if you put that on there, then it will come up with a tree that might be a specific tree that might have that. The thing about this is, because it is really general, there are 1,557,565 trees in the genealogies. So depending on what you're looking for, it can bring up a ton of stuff. It can also bring up nothing. So don't get all discouraged if nothing comes up. You know, maybe your ancestor just has not been put in anybody else's genealogy that's here in this collection. So just sometimes it's a little hit and miss. You can filter that larger list by keyword, by collection, or by location. And then if there's a tree that doesn't come up with a specific person, if there's a tree, then the pertinent tree will come up in the search box, and then you can do the name search. If you get an older GEDCOM from an older GEDCOM software variety, that may or may not have necessarily been filtered for privacy. That is living people. So there may be some living people on older GEDCOM submissions. So just be aware of that. Community trees. This is the first one that we'll talk about. Community trees is actually a project that a lot of people have been working on around the world. There are millions of people in it. It's got lots of projects. So each tree is a project. They are lineage trees that are linked to places. So villages, parishes, regions, or even a country. might have a community tree project attached to it. So what FamilySearch did was they gathered all these projects and put them together on FamilySearch genealogies. And so they can be helpful depending on where you are looking at for a name. They do contain source citations. They are accessible to you and they are protected, so you cannot change them or do anything with them, but they do contain sources. That's why they're high accuracy on their data. They haven't done a lot on it since either 2017 or 2019, depending on the tree. I think part of it, probably COVID that did that, but anyway, they are trying to get it back on track. You can find a complete list of the community trees project. So if you're looking for a specific country or city or whatever, under that article there in the wiki, FamilySearch Community Trees Project. And you can also look on the FamilySearch blog, which if you don't use the blog, I suggest you do. It's kind of clunky to search through, but it's really good for a lot of interesting questions you might have. Anyway, you can look on the blog for Community Trees, a reliable resource for genealogy breakthroughs. And those are just examples on the side. The find community trees by keyword, that's just how it would look if you wanted to find that particular type, that particular tree that you were looking for if you found it on the community trees project. This is just an example of what will come up if you search the collection for community trees. So I searched the collection of community trees for Leicestershire, and they did happen to have one. Not every place you look will have one, but if they do, it'll come up. And it'll come up to this green information blurb. And if you always be careful to read the information blurb, it will tell you kind of what's in that tree. And then you'll know whether or not it's going to be helpful for you, but you can still go to it and look at it. Again, the information may be really good and the information just may not be useful to you at all, but you know, that's the luck of the draw. So the second one we'll talk about today is oral genealogies. And this one is more useful if you have ancestry from Africa. We lived there for 7 years, and then we also served a mission for our church in Africa. So this is a really ongoing project that the FamilySearch particularly has been doing, where they send people out into the villages and they collect oral genealogies from the older villagers because they're not being passed on anymore very well. They used to just pass them down from grandfather to child and son to child, and this is not happening as much as it used to because people are all living in the cities now, and so the people in the villages are kind of out there isolated. But it's really cool. Same in East Asia and the Pacific Islands, the same thing is happening. These old genealogies are getting lost. There's also an Israeli collection there, so those basically are where they are. So for a lot of us who have just basically European ancestry, they're not very helpful, but they're audio files. But FamilySearch will take from that audio file and make a family tree from the contents of the audio file. So it actually is digitized and searchable, but the original is an audio file. You can also find the oral genealogies in the FamilySearch catalog under the genealogy topic of the country. So they're actually in the catalog as well. These are very high data accuracy because these oral genealogies were passed on very carefully. There's a specific button on some of the search pages that you'll find in the genealogies for how to use this source. I would suggest that you click on that and it will help you to use the source, those collections correctly or more easily. And then you can also look in the FamilySearch help. Again, this is in help, not wiki, for oral genealogies. Next is computer generated trees. These are family trees that were created by a computer. And so again, the accuracy by the computers do is not really that great yet. So hopefully they'll improve and we'll get better and better records. But what they do with these computers, they look at historical records. They pull out the names and the dates and the places from these historical records by computers that can actually read the languages and like differentiate between different names and different places and so on. Anyway, they pull that information out and then they construct a tree from the information that they've pulled out of these records. Again, they're just moderate, not 100% accurate. And there are only 5 trees so far in this collection, but there are a lot of names from those 5 trees. So if you have anybody in your tree that's from these 5 places, Tasmania versus Santa Catarina, Pangasinan, Philippines, Nuevo Leon, Mexico, and Abruzzo, Italy. You can search it as you would another tree and hopefully find somebody that's in there that's from your family. And again, you see the informational blurb there, and that tells you it's got 2 million records in the Tasmanian records. This is an ongoing thing also. So the Guild of One Name Studies is a really awesome organization. And what they do is they want to find one name and then do all the research they can on that surname. So it's not a specific individual's tree. It's a study of a name. There aren't tons and tons of them in there yet. As you can imagine, there are so many zillions of surnames in the world. But they take that name in their project and they research facts about that name, and they find all the people who have held that name. So it's not a pedigree kind of a thing. It's just trying to find people who had that name. So for example, my maiden name is Hicken. If they were doing a project on that, they would try to find instances where that name had been held by any specific person. And then they try to gather those all together into that one name study. So it's basically lists of names. They're not necessarily connected to other people. But again, we're looking for names, right? So search as you do other collections with the names. Titles of the individual trees are not helpful. So know your specific surname. You can use different variations of the surname. It's helpful to know the location that you're looking for that surname, specific surname. And then you can search the collection for specific individuals. And once you find the surname, study if it's there. Again, don't get discouraged. If it's not there, come back another time. The next one is partner trees. This was taken from mytrees.com. It's an older database that was started when the internet first was starting. They closed it in 2020. And the tree titles are not one bit helpful. They say nothing. They're just like a number or a name or some identity. It's some identifying thing. So it is difficult to search because the titles are not helpful at all. I think what they just did was took all the trees from that and just assigned it this one of these identity numbers. Roots Finder contains user trees as well. This is one of the partner trees, and so that's a different one. Roots Finder, it's user trees as well, but it's not closed. It's still growing. So, and it is not difficult to search by surname at all. American Ancestors is also a user-generated collection of mostly New England people. So if you have ancestors that came over on the Mayflower and want to become a daughter of the American Revolution or son of the American Revolution, they could be helpful for you. Mainly, these partner trees are useful for looking for brick wall or missing ancestors that somebody else might have found something out about. They list the submitter, but they don't list citations. They don't have sources for any of the sources. So when you use these trees, they're really not very accurate. They're more towards the lower accuracy level. Now, this is the pedigree resource file. This is what somebody was asking a question about earlier. This is actually GEDCOM files, and there are hundreds of millions of names in these files. So there are a lot of duplicates, of course. They're not all individual names. So you're not looking for like hundreds of millions of names to find one person in that, and there's the only sole person in there that with that name. It's not going to happen. There are a lot of duplicates because they are individual users' pedigrees. So if you do have your own pedigree on another source besides Family Tree, you might consider putting that on the pedigree resource file. You can share it. So when you search the pedigree research file, you need to search specifically for a person, use certain names, and then narrow it. You can also search within a tree. So if you know the tree, you can find the tree by viewing all the trees in that collection and then looking within that tree. So the trees are searchable themselves. And there are sources attached, as I showed you with my entry. If they had sources or if they used the newer version of GEDCOM, they will have sources and notes as well. Be careful about these files because, as I said, they are only user generated. They are not checked by anybody. Nobody's going to tell you if it's inaccurate or not. And so you just have to kind of be careful and figure that out for yourself. This is an example. This is my great-grandfather's from my own GEDCOM that I put on to it. I'm going to put a new one on soon because this has been updated the last 2 years since I put this on, or a year and a half. So I'm going to put a new one on, and then you'll have even more information about my great-grandfather, George Davis Thurman. Now, the ancestral file, this is what FamilySearch was based on. Okay, this is a closed collection of family trees and other information submitted to FamilySearch before 2003. So this is very old information. Doesn't mean it's necessarily inaccurate. Doesn't mean it's necessarily accurate. Okay, I found a lot of information that my relatives did in the 1950s and 40s and 60s that just wasn't right. They did the best they could, but they didn't have all the information we have, so it wasn't all of it right. But it does have about 40 million names. And again, there are a lot of duplicates because they were submitted by members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so a lot of us have similar ancestry, so there are a lot of duplicates in there. But what it does is it shows the individual's names, the family relationships, the dates, and the places of birth, marriage, and death. So it's actually really good in the sense that it has a lot of information if people could find it. They're useful for finding clues to ancestral names, dates, and relationships. There's no sources at all, though. They did not include any sources in there. It was too much for them to try to keep the sources, so they didn't even want sources. Occasional notes. You can search by name on the green page that comes up by clicking on the link to the file after you click on search for person, and then you can find a specific person. So you can also look up more about this on Ancestral File in the wiki. This is actually a pretty good place. And a lot of those people that did that old research were really, really dedicated and very diligent. And the other thing is a lot of this information came from family information. And so even though the dates and even the places may not be correct, oftentimes the names are actually right because they were passed down like the oral genealogies were. The IGI is the International Genealogical Index. It's a closed computer file as well. It contains several 100 million entries because it is not by name. So what they did was they recorded each event on a name. So they separated all the events. And that's why if you find a person on FamilySearch that no one else has worked on, and you put your information in, and then you find, oh, there's this duplicate, then there's that duplicate, and they happen to be because each child's name is duplicated with the parent's name is duplicated. And so you have to merge each parent, merge each profile page so that you have one family with all the kids under the same parents. That's because this is what they used for that. But it's got, so each event was entered and not each family, because if they'd used the personal resource file for FamilySearch, it would have been a mess. As it is, it's a little bit of a mess, but at least it's not a gigantic mess. So the contributed IGI is in genealogies. So what they did was they took all the information of contributors and put that into the genealogies here in FamilySearch. So as you can see, my little smiley face says it can be really horrible or it can be really good. It just depends on the person who submitted it. The best part about the IGI was the historical records, because they took the records that were on the IGI, and then they've also done that with other records that they've had, and they took those records and put them as entries into the FamilySearch. It does cause problems in the merging thing, but it actually is incredibly helpful for FamilySearch and Family Tree that they did that. It's really, really amazingly incredibly helpful. If you want to search the IGI historical records, those are in the historical records section, and you can search them there. That's why sometimes the historical records is very difficult to use, because they are by event, and so you'll find a bunch of different things within one name, and they can just be all kind of jumbled together for the same reason. So that's why I don't use historical records unless I know specifically what I'm looking for and the specific collection that I'm looking in. So you can search the IGI here by name and approximate date of an event. So you need to know birth, marriage, or death. Those are the only three that are on there: birth, marriage, and death. And location is also very useful. because of course of the different names that people have. If you click on that green how to use this source button that I showed you, it will take you to the wiki page International Genealogical Index, and there's some more information there that will probably be useful for you. Now let's talk about GEDCOMS in general and how they fit into the FamilySearch genealogies. As I said, the FamilySearch genealogies is a collection of compiled GEDCOM databases. What is the GEDCOM itself? The GEDCOM is a data structure, and it's basically a kind of software that was created by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints so that people with genealogical information could store their information in a standard form and exchange that standardly information with other people and other computer programs without having to print things out and do all the other really tedious things that we used to have to do. If you see a file with a type .ged, then you'll know that is a GEDCOM file. They are text files, so unless I've changed it recently, and they may have, you won't find photographs, you won't find, scanned documents. They're not in GEDCOM files. They're text files. They contain information and linkages so that you can exchange genealogy data. And this goes, you don't have to necessarily have the same software application. You can go between applications. So that's one of the really good things about it. I think it's wonderful. It is the standard for genealogy. Everybody uses it. So how do you use it? Why should you even use it? FamilySearch wants people to upload their files, their GEDCOM files in that Pedigree resource file, because it gives, again, a very good resource for people to look for their own ancestors if they're not already in the family tree. There's a good reason for you to do it as well, because FamilySearch will preserve your file as you uploaded it. You cannot change it as it is on FamilySearch, but you can delete it anytime you want and upload a more recent file, as I'm going to do on my great-grandfather's line. So that's a very good thing. The other reason to just put it on a GEDCOM file and save it in a thumb drive or to your hard disk or to your backup in the cloud, save it in as many places as you find safe, is that then that file will never disappear. So say Ancestry for some reason got blown up or something and all the files disappeared, and it took them 10 years to get them all back online. You'd still have your file from Ancestry or from your Roots Magic. If your computer goes down and it is like completely destroyed and your Roots Magic disappeared and you cannot recover it, if you keep that GEDCOM file in a safe place, it's still there, and you can just reload your Roots Magic program and reload your GEDCOM file, and it's still there. Okay, so that's my recommendation, is always keep a current GEDCOM, probably, say, depending on how much genealogy you do, how often you do it, maybe every month or so, to replace your file. It's just like every other ongoing thing you do, just keep updating it, and so then you'll have it. The nice thing about it being on FamilySearch, however, is that you're not the only person that can see it. You can share it with other people and they can see it too. They cannot change it, just like on Ancestry. They cannot change it. You can't change it unless you upload a new file, but you can upload a new file at any time. You can compare and copy information that's on your GEDCOM into Family Tree. And a lot of people don't know this, and I wish that nobody did, because it's available to you to do that. And it can be really useful if you have a tree that like nobody else has, and you know for sure that no one has ever put these people into Family Tree. And it can be super awesome to be able to compare and upload that information into Family Tree. If people do it who don't know what they're doing, it can cause a real problem. So be careful if you do decide to put any information from your GEDCOM into Family Tree itself. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, how can you create your GEDCOM file? So I am not going to go into how every single program creates a GEDCOM file, because it's just too complicated and you don't need me to. So the way you do it is you use the procedures that are specified by the software that you use. So if you use a specific genealogy program, or if you have different trees on different programs like Heritage, my find my past ancestry. You can make a GEDCOM file from each one of those places and have one from each of them. Then you can use those in however ways you can on any of those programs. Some of the products that use the GEDCOM, and most of the most common ones do, you can find those in Family Search Solutions Gallery, which is in Family Search. Just look, search on Google for Family Search Solutions Gallery. Don't try to find it in Family Search. You might not be able to. You can, but it's just complicated. Or you can search genealogy software on the web, and then they will tell you within the software if they have GEDCOM capability, okay? If you already have one of those programs that you're using, just see your help content or look on your vendor's website for information about how they use GEDCOM and how you can create your own GEDCOM file. You can upload it. You can put it down into your own computer. I have GEDCOM files all over my computer. The wiki article GEDCOM in the research wiki talks more about GEDCOM in general. If you're a tech kind of person, they'll give you much more information on that in the Family Search GEDCOM article there at the bottom, if you're super techie and you want to really know about it. Okay, now how do I upload my GEDCOM tree to Family Search Family Tree? This is the first thing, is to prepare. Okay, so first, prepare your work. And most record managers in software, particularly genealogy software, have tools that will do some of these things, if not all of them. Okay, so you want to enter your names in a standard way. It doesn't necessarily have to be Family Search standard, but it's better if it is. So the way it is spoken, that is like, you know, first name, then surname, is what that means. It doesn't mean, you know, if you say Jimmy Joe and his really name is James, that's not what it's talking about. You can look at the birth certificate, and that's how I usually do it. I almost always enter the birth certificate name unless it's significantly changed or they've changed it legally. You can enter the most commonly used name if another name was not used, or if it's very unfamiliar and nobody would be able to find it from that name. You can put the different name down into notes so that it's available as a name. You can also put nicknames and other things in your notes so that people can find it under maybe those names if the note has been indexed. You can print surnames in all capital letters. Some people do that. That used to be the standard completely, but it isn't really anymore. So it just depends on what you did when you started. And if you still do it, then you don't have to change everything. Just leave them in capital letters if that's the way you like it. Don't enter anything in the name field except for a name, and no descriptions or things like that. You can put that in other places, and never put characters in. And that means like asterisk, anything like that. Do not put those in on the name field, okay? That just complicates matters. If you don't know the name, then just leave the name field blank. And you can also put titles in their notes or in other places on Family Search. Of course, they have a section for that. And they also have other sections for putting alternate names down. If you know your ancestor's maiden name, your female ancestor's maiden name, put that down and not her married name. If you don't know her maiden name, leave the surname blank. And if you can't determine her first name, you can either put Mrs. So-and-so with her husband's name, or you can just put Mrs. and her first name. It's better if you put Mrs. though, to put the husband's name. I generally leave the maiden name just blank if I don't know what it is. Secondly, use your dates properly. So your dates should be in the format day, month, year. Don't use slashes. Don't just use numbers. That can be very confusing, because if we put in dates the way we put them in the United States and somebody from Europe is trying to find a date, they will not understand how that works, perhaps, or you won't understand somebody else's entry if they're from Europe. So it's best to use the actual names of the months. Don't put anything into the date field except for a date. And if you don't know a date, you can put about ABT or about ABOUT. You can put that with either the year or the date of the month and year. Or if you just know the month, you can just put month in, but put as close of information as you know. If you have ideas about that, you can put things in the notes. And your place names, and it starts with the smallest and goes to the largest. Put a comma in between each entity. And capitalize, please capitalize, and divide the place names with commas. Enter the place name it was known at the time of the event, if it's at all possible. If you can find that, that's a really good way to do things, because, for example, Utah State used to be Utah Territory, and many of my ancestors were born in Utah Territory. I don't mess with that. If people do it in Family Search, put it in with the state name instead of a territory name. I don't fiddle with that, but for your own accuracy, it's best to do it that way. If you don't know part of a place name, then just put the comma and then put a space, then a comma, a space, and then the next name of the place. You can also, if you didn't know exactly whether someone was born there or not, you can, or died there, you can put of where they lived. So of means where the person lived. Clean it up then. So once you get that all information in, you check for possible problems such as duplicates, place names, people, and people who don't have any attached family to them. That's not usually very helpful if people are just kind of hanging out there in left field and they don't have any family attached. Look through the notes and other unstructured information. And if you don't want something to be published, like if you put some note in that is only for you and you think it'll go through, then just take it out, or else just, well, I would just take it out personally. Notes. Some software will let you have GEDCOM notes, some won't. GEDCOM will now, but again, it just depends on the version that your software is using. So the same goes for sources. Some you can get sources out of and others you won't be able to. So it just depends. You will not be able to upload memories from GEDCOM. And ordinances cannot be uploaded at all. That's not something that they will accept. So the best way to upload the actual GEDCOM, upload it, is to create the GEDCOM, as I said, and then go to your help in your software or in your website program. And they should have instructions, step-by-step instructions on how to create the GEDCOM file. And then actually, I know myheritageandancestry.com at least do have instructional videos on YouTube for how to create a GEDCOM file. So you can find that information. And then this is important. If you actually do have information and you are quite certain that it is not on Family Tree, and so you want it to be in Family Tree, you should submit a series of small files. So break your trees down and take them in no more than 100 names, because otherwise you won't be, it'll just drive you crazy and you won't want to do it. So just do it that way. It's just a lot easier for you and everybody else too. You can have a file that contains up to 100 megabytes. That's a lot of megabytes. So unless you're trying to upload a gigantic, huge, enormous file, it should take it. So these are just the steps. I'm not going to go through it. You can look through that, and you can also find how to do this on Family Search. But so you sign into Family Search, you click Search, you click Genealogies, you scroll down to how is Family Search Genealogies different from Family Search Family Tree. Then you click Upload Your Individual Tree. So you've got to go to the bottom of the page. Just scroll down. That's all I'm saying there. Just scroll down till it gets to the Upload Your Individual Tree. You can see that down at the bottom. Okay, it's not really obvious on the page. You have to scroll down to the bottom, and then click Upload Your GEDCOM file. When the box comes up, choose File is what you click next. Then you'll find the file in your computer. Enter the tree name that you're looking for, like if you have more than one file. Enter the tree name that you want to, and for example, mine would be Dearden Boone. That's what I put in because it's based on those two names, Dearden and Boone. So I put Dearden Boone. That way, if anybody looks for it, they're looking for those two specific names, they should be able to find it. And another reason why you want to break your trees up is for that reason, because then you can put, you don't have to have a million different surnames. Like just have just the two principal surnames. In the description field, tell people where the file came from and what you've done or anything that you think is significant, and then click Upload. So that's basically what you do. It's easy. These pictures that I've got up here for you, like this particular one, this will be as a handout on our website. So you'll be able to go back to this again. So you don't have to copy down it now. If you did it right, your file will upload into the Pedigree resource file. And after the upload, then anybody that wants to search that file will search it. They'll view all the information on it, but they cannot change it. Okay. So if you change your tree, though, you can delete it and add your current tree. Okay. FamilySearch users will also see your name, your contact name of FamilySearch. So it's your FamilySearch contact name and your FamilySearch info, the date your file was submitted, and any deceased people in the file, and any information that you put in the file with them. That will be available to them. They will see relationships. The page itself, as you saw on that file that I uploaded, it looks just like the FamilySearch Family Tree as it comes up, and any notes and sources that have been uploaded will be available as well, if it's the GEDCOM version that will do that. They're really easy to use. It just takes a little bit of practice. So this is an example. This is, again, my great-grandfather. This is his page. So I actually searched for George Amos Dearden, and this is what came up. So his tree is the descendancy tree of George Amos Dearden. That's the name of my tree that I uploaded, okay? The name is Dearden Boone Family Tree, and it's a description of his descendancy tree. And so you can see, it looks just like the family tree, and you can click on each one of these, and each one of those names will bring you up at that person's information, okay? Just like this one. It'll bring up that person's information, just like I have here, his birth, his death, any other information that's available to you on that tree. Oh, by the way, let me just go back there. As it looks, see at the top, it says search in this submission. You can search within this tree by clicking on search in this submission. So you can search within my tree or anybody else's tree by clicking on that for another person's name. Okay, the big old thumbs down there. Copying information from your GEDCOM to Family Tree is not recommended. And that's not just me talking, that's FamilySearch Family Tree. They do not want you to do this except under certain circumstances. The first is that the information may and probably is already in Family Tree. And if you copy it from your GEDCOM into Family Tree, then it causes these problems. It causes more needless work for you, because then you have to do the comparing and the copying, and then you have to merge. So I mean, it's just not worth it. It causes duplicate records. So many times people do this, and they just haven't done their homework, and so there are duplicate records created and duplicate ordinances are done, and it's just not a good thing. Overwrite and delete information that other people have already done. That is so frustrating to people when you take their information that they've worked with and put in, and then you put in less accurate information. It really makes people crazy. So that's another problem. It disrupts relationships sometimes. It changes relationships, and sometimes they're really hard to figure and put them back together again. It's just not that easy. In Family Tree, if a relationship gets broken, I've had to do it many times, and it's just not fun. It causes people irritation. You can see it causes me irritation. And it also, if you overwrite somebody else's page with your GEDCOM information page in Family Tree, then some of the sources, some of the notes, other previous information could be lost. So please don't copy your information into FamilySearch, into the tree, the Family Tree. We want you to put it in FamilySearch. We don't want you to put it in the tree unless you know for sure that that person is not in the tree. And unless you can kind of hook him into the tree, whoever it is that you're putting into the tree, hook them into the tree somehow. So rather than copy all your information in Family Tree at once, consider just transferring it manually, one by one, as you would if you did it from Ancestry. And enter only the dates and facts that you know are correct. Just put this stuff in, because it's just misery to people who have to deal with that kind of stuff if you can. So if you desire, then there are steps to do it, and I'm not going to go through them. They're in this help article here that at the bottom of the page here. How do I copy information from my GEDCOM file into Family Tree? And my answer to that question is you just don't do it. Okay, so if you need any more help, you're always welcome to come to the BYU Family History Library, where we work, and we love to have you come. We love to help you. We're happy to help you online. You can come in person. We're opening on Sundays again, so those of you who are in the area can actually come in physically on Sundays. soon, and you can come in any day of the week that we are open and the hours that we're open. The missionaries aren't there. There'll still be students at the desk during their office hours, and they can sometimes help you with machines and things like that. So we are a wonderful resource in this great family history milieu that you're welcome to come and use, and I hope that you will.